glad that we have a discussion on this very, very important theme, which deals with the future of this country, the present of this country, what is going to happen to different sectors, what will be our fiscal policy, what will be our monetary policy, what is about the package, that has been announced. How does this package compare with the packages of other countries? Because only yesterday, Japan has come out with third package, and Japan's package is 40% of the GDP as compared to 8% of our country. Many other countries have done 12 to 15%, and then the effectiveness of this package is also being talked about. There are the questions of growth. In the history of our country, after 41 years, I think we will have a growth which will be minus, I think. And this minus growth will impact our credit rating also, which will impact, our foreign investment coming in India. Our jobs are very badly affected. But what has been said is that India will have a bright future, maybe after 1 or 2 quarters. And so far as MBA education is concerned, I understand that MBA education will be good because here there will be high returns as compared to returns in other sectors. That is one. Number two, the Indian economy will be in the buoyancy mode after October. So those who take admissions now will have a very bright future, I think, in the next 2 years. By the time they come out, I think 2020, they'll have plenty of jobs, they'll have better jobs, they'll have a higher kind of jobs, they'll have better paid jobs. I think these are very, very important issues, and I'm very glad that Professor Rajesh is going to talk on this. He himself is an authority. He is an expert on the Indian economy, and then the moderator, Prashant Raman, is an expert on the Indian management. I think what is the what is the response of the Indian firms? What is the response of different sectors of the Indian economy? I think what is happening to our workers? I think what will happen to our productivity. These are very important issues, and I'm very glad that we have a group of 3 stalwarts here. Rajesh ji, supported by Professor Raman, who is moderating, and Professor Rakesh. I'm very much here, and I think maybe at the end, I think if Professor Rajesh and Professor Raman thinks that I can add something, I'll be happy to add. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. I request all the students, if they have any questions related to today's topic, they can post their questions by using the Q&A button, and we'll respond to it at the end of the session. So welcome, Rajesh sir. So over to you for the session.
Thanks a lot, Prashant, and thanks Mishra sir, thanks Rakesh. So I'm here to give a presentation on, so hello all. Economics is one of the very important subjects that you have once you join any MBA course. In the first year, in the first semester, you have microeconomics, which is economics at the level of firm and individual. Whereas in the second semester of the first year, you have macroeconomics, in which you will study topics such as GDP, monetary policy, fiscal policy. All that you have been reading in the newspapers, or usually you read in the newspaper. In fact, this topic which I am going to talk about relates to microeconomics itself, and which is very important. And the topic title is Focus on Select Measures of the Stimulus Package of the Central Government. Supporters' view and critics' view. So I'm focusing only on the select measures because there were many 40 odd measures announced. I'm going to focus on the most important ones and the debate and the polemics that surround those measures. What has been said by the supporters as well as what has been said by the critics. But before I talk about this, let me tell you that many of you could be BTech graduates, and maybe you are not aware of some of the basic concepts. So quickly, I will talk about those basic concepts also, because in the course of my presentations, you will come across those terms such as protectionism and free trade, so on and so forth. So remember, protectionism is that in which economies strongly believe that we need to protect our domestic industry from foreign competition. It is necessary that otherwise domestic industries may not grow, they may crumble under the very strong foreign competition. So what do we do when we follow protectionism? The economies, what do they do? So they erect tariff walls. That means they make imports costlier. They raise tariffs on imports. So imports do not come much to our country, and the domestic trader, the domestic businessman then gains from this because he can now produce those goods, those services which do not enter our country. Otherwise, if there is foreign competition, then the domestic producer may not be able to face that stiff competition. Hence, protectionism, that is what. But opposite, diametrically opposite to protectionism is free trade. So the economies that believe in free trade feel that there should not be such restrictions. There should not be barriers of goods entering from other countries. Goods from my country should enter that country freely in the sense without any tariffs, without any quotas being imposed, and goods from that country should enter my country without any restrictions. So we dismantle the barriers. So the goods enter freely across the borders. That is what is free trade. So there was a time when countries believed many decades back strongly in protectionism. But slowly people started realizing the virtues of free trade. They said it is the free trade, it is the competition which is very important. Only in the face of competition, the domestic producer will be able to perform better. He would be able to perform better. He will be able to give quality goods. So more and more competition, more choice for the consumers like you and me, and at standard prices. So that is what free trade believes in. And you also remember another concept, very often you come across capitalism. You say capitalist societies. They strongly believed in private sector playing a bigger role and not the government. Whereas socialist societies believe that government should play a strong role even in all the economic activities. They should manage industries, they should run businesses. So that is how soon after the Second World War, countries were divided, capitalist societies and socialist societies. But what did India do? India said we'll take best of the features of capitalism and best of the features of socialism. We'll mix and we'll call it as mixed economy. But how was this mixed economy? In this mixture of mixed economy, socialism was very dominant, which we called it as Nehruvian socialism, because Nehru was the architect at that time of various economic policies. So Nehruvian socialism. So what did they say? So we said, although private sector will be there, we will give freedom to the private sector to start industry, to start business, but it will be always under the supervision of the government. So slowly, this supervision of the government degenerated into tight controls in the form of licenses, in the form of permits. So it was very difficult to start businesses in India during those days. You need lots of permissions, lots of paperwork to go through. In fact, I suggest all of you, in the very first class of economics, I tell the students to study a book called India Unbound. If you have a notebook and pen, you note down India Unbound by Guru Charan Das. This is one of my very favorite books and must read for business school students. So India Unbound by Guru Charan Das gives a very good account of how India was before 1991, a closed economy as against market economy. Market economy strongly believes in prices of goods and services being determined by forces of demand and supply. So government will not interfere in that. So everything will be left to the forces, market forces. That is demand and supply. So according to that, the prices will change, go up and come down. That is the virtue of market economy. But we believed in closed economy. Then 1991 was a very crisis year. That was the year when we were in big problem. We had foreign exchange bare enough for a fortnight. Then we said, oh, what to do? Then we went to World Bank. World Bank said, okay, come on now, you have to open up your economy. You can't remain closed like this. So we opened up, and that's how what we now very often talk about globalization. That is integrating our economy with the world economy. Liberalization, removing the controls, removing the shackles of the economy. So we embarked on that. So now we are already 3 decades old with the globalization. So that is the background, first of all. So I wanted to you to get familiarized with these terms, protectionism, free trade, so that I think commerce graduates and economics graduates already have an idea, but maybe engineering graduates needed to know this so that they can understand my presentation better. Right. So coming to the project, to the topic, which has generated so much of heated debate on both the sides. Critics are anyway always there to criticize, and supporters also, what do they have to say? So the Atmanirbhar package, as it is called, what does it all mean? Atmanirbhar in Hindi means self-reliance, that not depending on anyone else, you are dependent on yourself, independent. So my presentation will take you through self-reliance. Why is it required? How is to be achieved? Can it really be achieved? Or is it a mere rhetoric? Like critics have said, it's only a talk. Rhetorical, they say. What are the points of debate? And in order to understand all this, I'm focusing on some of the measures only. So what are they? What are the measures? What are the points of debate? And why self-reliance? Why Atmanirbhar? Yeah. So, of course, already you are familiar with this word. In fact, this was coined by one famous author, Nicholas Taleb. You should read his books again. Okay. So he coined a term, black swan event. A swan is usually white. But what if it is black? That means it is something different. So no one predicted that such a thing will come our way. Coronavirus, black swan event. Everyone was caught unawares. So what did happen in this? I'm not going to talk, maybe we'll reserve it for some other day, the plight of migrants, etc. Of course, it was very bad to see the sight of migrants walking miles together. Anyone seeing that would be in tears, of course, and all that. So we will reserve it for some other day, but that's the. So what did it happen? Disruption of supply chains world over. What are supply chains? Suppose I'm making a mobile set here in India, but I need some components for it. Maybe I source it from some country X, some other part from some other country Y. Now the country X was hit by pandemic, country Y was also hit by pandemic. So from where am I to get those components? So my supply chain got disrupted. That is what I say. So disruption of the supply chain, more so from China, the hub of manufacturing activity. In fact, this particular crisis brought to the fore that how many countries were dependent on China badly for their supplies. That was a country which was manufacturing electronic components, it was manufacturing mobile phones, it was manufacturing pharmaceutical ingredients, so on and so forth. So the crisis brought home the point, including India, that how much we are dependent on one source. which had an adverse impact. Let me tell you, one of the research made by Fitch Ratings. Remember, Fitch Ratings is a credit rating agencies. So credit rating agencies, you know that what do? They rate the countries or they rate the businesses, A++, and so on and so forth. We need not go into that. 60%, to the extent of 60%, we were dependent on electronic components which were to come from China. And we were also dependent on China for APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients. You can note down, active pharmaceutical ingredients, those that help us in making antibiotics, vitamins, steroids. So our pharma came to be dependent on that. We were dependent on electronic component for China. So all this came to a grinding halt. In fact, even before the pandemic, what China did was it raised the active pharmaceutical ingredient prices for us as much as 30 to 40%, which again had an adverse impact on our pharma sector. So we said, now nothing doing. Depending on one source like this is absolutely not advisable. So it is time for us to be Atmanirbhar, to be self-reliant. So what did we do? We started with the MSME sector. In fact, the very first announcement on the very first day related to MSME, micro, small, and medium enterprises. Micro, small, and medium enterprises. I will tell you, what do they mean? When do you call micro a micro? When do you call small a small? When do you call medium a medium? But remember, the importance of MSME sector for Indian economy lies in the fact that it is one of the largest employment generators. About 8 to 10% of GDP is contributed by MSME sector. So that speaks volumes regarding the micro, small, and medium enterprises, and it is labor intensive. Okay, so we tend to employ more labor. So for a country like India, this is all the more helpful, the MSME sector, because large scale businesses may be more capital intensive. So MSMEs are labor intensive. So that speaks volumes regarding the importance of MSME sector for India. Of course, entire one class can be had on MSME sector. That's a different thing again. So what are the measures that we announced and how will it help? We said 3 lakh crore collateral free automatic loans for MSME. That means you collateral free. That means you don't have to pledge anything. You will get to the extent of 3 lakh crore for MSMEs, it will be distributed. So if you go, you don't have to pledge anything for this. And most important is the new definition of MSME. Now here it comes. I told you what is when micro is called as macro. If the investment is to the extent, this is before the particular reform was announced on that day. If 25 lakhs is the investment limit, then you would be called as micro. More than 25 but till 5 lakhs, you are called small. More than 5 crores, 25 lakhs to 5 crores is small. And then medium is 5 crores to 10 crores. Now, what was the problem with this? Now, micro, suppose 25 lakhs investment I made, I'm micro. Now, if I make 25 lakhs more, 1 rupee more, then I will lose the benefit of being called as micro. So that was putting fetters on my growth. I really hated that. So what is this so much of tight limit? I want to grow further. I want to a more similarly small investment. More than 5 crores, okay. Now you will lose the benefits of being called as small. Medium, you lose the benefit of being called as medium if you cross 10. Then the government say, hey, look now, you can grow. There is no limit now. Come on, fly. So from 25 lakhs to for micro, now the investment limit is 1 crore. That means I can happily call myself as micro till I reach an investment limit of 1 crore. For small, it is 10. And for medium, it is 20. Apart from that, there is another criteria also added, that based on sales turnover also, apart from the investment limit. So there are limits for that also. Then next. So this is what MSME. Now you know. So when now micro will be 1 crore limit, small will be 10, and medium will be 20. So now I can fly higher. Okay. So that is what government wanted to give us. Then global tenders to be disallowed to 200 crores. Now here our debate comes. In the next slide, I will tell you. Now global tenders to be disallowed. That means if you are bidding for the government contracts to the extent of this limit, so foreign companies will be disallowed now. This is again to help MSMEs or competition from foreign companies. Now MSMEs can bid more for the government contracts to manufacture various goods. And that is how MSMEs will go further, will grow further. So that is what government said. So we are going to disallow, no longer foreign companies can bid for this much of global tenders. Then MSME receivables to be released in 45 days. Now, one problem which MSMEs always face is, I sold goods to you, but I had to wait, keep on waiting for it, for receivables. Okay. Now it says any dues that are there, especially by the government department to MSMEs, will be cleared within 45 days, so that the liquidity problem of MSMEs will be solved. So these are the most important points I have taken, first of all, for MSMEs. So 3 lakh for collateral-free automatic loans, new definition of MSME, global tenders, new definition, so that MSMEs go further. Then global tenders to be disallowed to the extent of 200 crores, and MSMEs receivables to be quickened. So within 45 days, the dues of MSMEs, micro, small, medium enterprises, will be cleared by the governments. So this is what is the thing which on the road to Atmanirbhar. So we make MSMEs strong, MSMEs become strong. Yes, then we become more self-reliant. We don't have to depend for our electronic components on someone. We don't have to depend on active pharmaceutical ingredients for making our vitamins and antibiotics on someone else. So this is how. So the pandemic probably taught us a lesson that yes, you had a requirement to become more Atmanirbhar and more self-reliant. Now the debate. What is the debate? Some critics said, hey, look now, is it self-isolation? That means you embarked on globalization for 3 decades. You said you will do trade freely with the countries. There will not be any tariff barriers. Goods can flow from every country to my country. So all that you were a member of WTO, or you are still, I mean, India is still World Trade Organization. That is the watchdog of international trade. So once you are a member of WTO, you have to profess free trade. You cannot talk about protectionism. That is. So now that people said, okay, some of them criticize, is it self-isolation? Now, are you going back to the days of protectionism? Does it tantamount to protectionism? That is what they question. And another question that is asked is, okay, you are saying now you want to become an alternative manufacturing hub to China. That means those companies which are relocating from China, you want to call them to India also. That is also there. So, first question, does it mean self-isolation? Far from it. It is certainly not protectionism. India needs to be competitive enough in order to attract those businesses that want to relocate. So what is that you are going to promise them? Even the next slide, I will tell you, those companies which are going to relocate, what are you going to tell them? Hey, look, this is what we have now. Come to our country and trade with us. Okay. It is certainly not an isolationist response. We are not saying that no globalization, not at all. The subsequent slides, I will tell you that how we are also professing globalization. We are going to invite the foreigner to our country. We are going to ease business for him so that he sets up a business here, alternate to China. All that we are going to do, certainly. But at the same time, we realize the virtue of being self-reliant. Our response is not the kind of isolationist response which America gave. In fact, much before the pandemic, America, led by Trump, was talking about America first. You must have read, at least some of you somewhere, it was erecting barriers. It said that globalization has done so much of harm to us. It was erecting barriers to Mexico, one of the countries which is near to it. It was asking the businesses from other countries to come back to America. So that was that kind of response. Brexit also happened. Britain's exit from European Union. So that response was altogether different. They probably sent wrong signals. It sent a wrong signal that is America now professing protectionism. But we are not sending that wrong signals. We are only trying to amend some weaknesses of globalization. Right? So you are self-reliant also. At the same time, you are also realizing the benefits of globalization, and you are not going to isolate yourself. Being self-reliant and taking up some measures of self-reliance doesn't mean that, yes, you are now going to say goodbye to protectionism. So as I told you, my subsequent slides will tell you how we will do it. So fine. Now what are the critics to say? Announcing, okay, you have done fine. You are saying Atmanirbhar, MSME is strong. You have made some announcement. You are saying, okay, the debate is going on. We are the alternative destination to China. Yes, come here, relocate. But critics say, do you have things enough with you to attract those companies that want to relocate? One of the first and the foremost thing that is most talked about is factor market reforms. Let me tell you what are factor markets. They are called factors of production that help you in production. So land, labor, capital, they are called as factors of production. Some of you who have BCom degree, who studied BCom, they know in their first year BCom in economics, they say factors of production, separate lesson, land, labor, capital, and all. So there is so much need to be done in the factor market reforms. Labor. India's labor laws are criticized as being very archaic, that is very outdated, not very progressive in nature, and too many labor laws. Of course, I'm not an expert in labor laws as such. So, but let me tell you, we have an Industrial Disputes Act, we have a Trade Unions Act, and we have a Factories Act, so on and so forth, that put lots of fetters on the growth of the industry. So an ideal labor law is such which puts a balance between the interests of the labor, protecting their democratic rights, at the same time protecting the rights of the employer also. He should have some powers to hire and fire the labor when not required, when the performance of the labor is poor. You know, in private sector, in fact, you have perform or perish. You know, if you don't perform, you are shown the door. Okay, but these labor laws were putting lots of fetters on that. So both of them. So an ideal labor laws are those which brings a judicious balance, you know, that judicious blend, wherein you protect the interests of the workers. That will be there, certainly. But at the same time, employer. For example, in industries having 100 or more employees, there are some difficult rules for removal. So that is protected. So they say which foreign company will come to India where the labor laws are so stringent, so simplify the labor laws. So some state governments are going in that direction, we are told. The newspapers mentioned recently Uttar Pradesh government has done something. Okay, so it has watered down in some of the labor legislations, etc. So trying to make things easier. So that is there. Then land related issues. Land acquisition is a very big task in India. You want to start a business, you want to acquire land. You have to go through, again, lots of paperwork, permission, and land prices also are supposed to be very high. So the critics say, first of all, do something about this. But of course, it is again a difficult balancing act for the government. If they do something with the labor laws, they say you are not protecting the interests of the labor. If they don't do something, they say, no, it is still stringent. So, and moreover, you should remember that land, labor, and this topics, you know, state governments have a bigger say in this. So for the union government also, it's difficult. And then comes, look at the third point, you know, it talks about our logistics. Logistics, that is our transport, etc. So one of the things, you know, recently there was a study by UNCTAD, United Nations Commission for Trade and Development. United Nations Commission for Trade and Development. So it said, the median time spent by a container ship during one port call, a ship which transports the good from India to some other country. And so for India, it takes 0.93 days or something. And in China, it is just 0.6 days. So if something is coming from India, you have to wait longer than that something comes from China. So the logistics of China is much more robust. You know, you are always compared with China students. Let me tell you, you know, like in your school, your teacher used to compare you with some first ranker saying that, hey, look, how Prashant Raman gets 100 out of 100 in maths, and look at you, you don't score anything. Okay, so like that, we are every time compared with China. Look at their infrastructure, how strong it is. Look at their highways. Look at their power sector. Okay, how robust it is. Look at their logistics, their ship transport, their road transport. It is so strong. So you compare very poorly with China. So now if you are saying that I'm alternative destination to China, so show them that how alternative destination you are by making your logistics strong, infrastructure strong. So make that first. Our power sector is perennially in problem. Look at the problem. Mainly the DISCOM. DISCOMs are the distribution companies, electricity distribution. I need not go into the nitty-gritties of that. So that has always been in problem, because the tariffs charged for some sectors is very high by power sector and some are very low. Like agriculture sector, almost it is a free power. That is one of the political gimmicks, you know, that we have sustained over the years and all. So I will not talk about all that. And industries is charged very high tariffs. So industry is usually vexed up with power sector. It's a high tariffs, all. So we will get out of the grid and we'll set up our own power plants. So power is costly. So all this is, so do something to your power sector, they say. So your logistics, your infrastructure, your land reforms, your labor reforms, all this have to be in place. Then you can say, yes, look, we are certainly an alternative destination to China. Unless until that happens, maybe not. That's what critics say. So one of the articles I have quoted here, please keep reading lots of newspaper. That is also what I have told, what I usually tell in introductory classes. Once you join MBA, especially the engineering graduates, maybe you did not read much of papers. Everyone, fine. Your generation reads less sometimes, I feel. So without market reforms and a clear path out of lockdown, we may not be able to take China's place. Vivek Daheja, who continuously writes it and says, large MNEs, multinational enterprises are MNCs, multinational companies, at present are conscious of keeping costs down, and making a big move out of China proves costly. So they are thinking, okay, alternative destination, yes, we should have, but suddenly moving out of China, I don't know. We have to see how it is. So that is there. And another very important thing, Vietnam and Bangladesh are emerging as rivals, especially in textile sector. In fact, India's textile sector, one of the largest employers. Okay, and we can do wonders in the textile sectors. But still we are lagging behind even a small country like Vietnam and Bangladesh. So that is the cause of worry. But we have strengths also. Let me tell you, it is not that we are only crying. So one of the companies called JLL, which is into real estate service, it came out with a paper, Great Places for Manufacturing in India. So it says India, on account of large domestic market and low cost production, is well positioned to host new investments in range of sectors. Right. So large domestic product, after all, second most populous country of this world. So obviously our domestic market is large enough to lure those companies which want to relocate. So certainly we have our strengths and we have our plus points. Then this is about MSMEs, how we are going to help. What and what do they feel if they're relocating from China and all that narrative. But what else we are doing? Agriculture also is very important. We make our agriculture stronger. We become more and more self-reliant. 65%, 60 to 65% of the India's population is dependent on agriculture. But farmers' plight, this is one area which I personally also feel very strong about. Okay, even the 1991 reforms, which I just now talked about in the beginning, did not do much for agriculture. The farmer's plight. He was always at the receiving end. He never was able to market his produce properly. He never got his credit properly. Although agriculture in the beginning of the planning reform was declared as a priority sector. So that was there. So that was a problem. So there were many hurdles in his way to get the right price, and he was not able to sell directly to you and me, middleman. So all that was there. So we said now will time to do something in agriculture also. So Essential Commodities Act, one of the legislations which has put again lot of restrictions on Indian farmer, passed way back in the year 1955, the days of socialism, early years of planning, the 5th year of our planning. So it is now going to be amended. We had lots of stock limits and price caps for the farmers, which was putting lots of problem for him. So now we say all the stock limits except during the very emergent circumstances, emergency, natural calamities, etc. We will put some stock limits. Otherwise, no stock limits, no price caps. The farmer can sell his produce to whomsoever it wants to at best of the best prices. We also put controls on cereals, edible oils, oil seeds, pulses, onions, potatoes. So all this is to be deregulated. Deregulated is freed from controls whatsoever. Then APMC is another, act, Agriculture Produce Marketing Committee. So that was also putting lots of restrictions on the farmer. So now we are trying to amend Essential Commodities Act, APMC Act. In fact, there is a talk to do away totally with the APMC Act. So this is about, okay. Now, in the beginning, I mentioned that self-reliant Atmanirbhar, does it mean, as critics said, isolationist? Are you going to isolate yourself and say goodbye to globalization? No, there are many other things we have taken up which tells us, hey, look here, we still believe in privatization, okay, which are professing, globalize, and we still strongly believe that government will not interfere always in business. Remember, market economy believes that the business of the government is not to be in business. Capitalist societies, famous at it. Business of the government is not to be in business. It should manage only railways, currency coinage, etc. But nothing more than that. That's what it is. So we said coal blocks allotted to private sector. Coal sector is the one which is very controversial. So many things have been written. There were movies on that, like Gangs of Wasepur. Okay, so in fact, Gangs of Wasepur was, given as a case study in some of the B schools, I believe. Okay, so that how coal sector in India functions. So, okay, we need not again go into that. So coal blocks to be allotted to private sector. So it said all along, it was totally under government control. So that will be there now. Private sector mining will start, although in a smaller way, the coal block. So coal shortages was being a problem for many sectors, especially the power sector, which I talked about just now. So let us remove some restriction in coal mining. And that is how one of the measures announced. 500 mining blocks to be offered through open auction process. That means private sector can come. Public sector enterprises. What are public sector? Public sector undertakings or public sector enterprises. Of course, they are an important part of our economy. Some of the PSUs have done a good job. Say NTPC, one of the largest power sector companies in our country, no doubt about it. But there was the time when the beginning of the planning era, we believed, as I told you, government has to manage industries, etc. So that's how Nehru then thought about PSUs. In fact, he said that PSUs will occupy commanding heights of the economy. That was Nehru's famous quote. Even today, it is quoted somewhere or the other. Commanding heights. So PSUs will make tremendous difference to India's landscape. But did not happen as it was envisaged, because we started doing anything and everything. So we said now PSU's role should be watered down. From 1991, in fact, we were on that job of reducing the role of public sector undertakings. Not totally going up, but yes, the role will be reduced. So now they were to remain only in strategic sector. There also not more than 4. That is what our finance minister said. Not more than 4 in strategic sectors also. And in non-strategic sector, all the more it will not be there. Then FDI limit in defense manufacturing raised to 74%. So it is an answer to the critics who said, okay, self-isolation, goodbye to globalization, no private. They said, no, see what we are doing. Foreign direct investment is allowed now 49% to 74% the limit. So foreign investment can happen to this extent of 74%. So yes, that means what? The point which I made, self-reliant, Atmanirbhar, doesn't mean that globalization is going to be reduced to the dustbin. Definitely not. It will be there with us along with our Atmanirbhar and self-reliance. Then airports, another very important part of our infrastructure. We are going to say, PPP, public-private partnership. So that is how private sector can take part in airports. Foreigner can come, he can become a part of this. Then privatization of electricity distribution to start within union territories. Okay, so we say we will privatize even electricity distribution, although it is there, like in Delhi it is there. Those in Delhi, that Reliance is there, okay, through its company BSES and all that, okay. So quickly I will move to the other side. What critics have to say further? They say, why so much of loans through banks? Everything is said, loan from banks. Street vendor, okay, go to a bank, take loan. MSME, go to a bank, take loan. Instead, they were telling all this now, will they be ready to give loans during this tough time? And we have to go through all the process. Rather than you should have put money directly in our hands. The cash-strapped MSMEs, the cash-strapped street vendor, they all like to say, put money in their hands. Why didn't you do that? Rather than through the loans, going through the banks and all. The 3 lakh collateral-free loan to MSMEs covers only about 45 lakhs MSMEs. Why not a wage protection package? Critics are quoting. Now, what did UK government did? It said, to the companies, we'll pay 80% of the salary or wages of your employees, provided you do not terminate them. Why can't you have? Abhishek Manu Singhvi, the Congress leader and strong critic of BJP, he said in his article, it is a maze of financial jugglery. Of course, critics will use this strongly worded words, but fine. So why not a wage protection package? Why not money directly in their hands? So supporters say, look here, just days before these announcements were made, 5 days continuously, from 13th to 17th of May, in March itself, there was an announcement, Prime Minister Garib Kalyan, in which there were some cash transfers already. And how the cash transfers will happen when migrants were moving? So that was a question. So the government is saying, if demand spurring, see, why do you have to spur the demand. That means now, if I put money in the hands of someone, he's going to buy those goods. If he buys those goods, the person who buys the goods will prosper. He in turn will buy the goods. So that will trigger a chain of transactions. So on the whole, the country will prosper. So spurring the demand. If spurring the demand is the way, then yes, even by giving loans, it can happen. Demand spurring is through various other ways, by giving loans also. So if I'm giving a loan to MSME, he is taking the loan and he's going to purchase that raw material. So the raw material supplier will be paid. So raw material supplier, when he gets paid, he goes with that money and buys some goods. In turn, the demand is triggered. So you will learn this, in your economics classes further when you come. 40,000 crore additional has already been given under Manegra, one of the flagship rural development, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. So already there. And yes, even if some reforms fail, certainly some will succeed, they feel. And the overall impact will be positive, the supporters of the government. And yes, this is a very important quote. You know, in anticipating the package, some people expected a high five and are disappointed with Namaste. Bibek Debroy is a member of the government's Economic Advisory Council, a great authority on economic issues, especially trade. No, he said that, what do you do in a high five? You raise a palm, okay, and clasp it against others' palm. But now high five no longer is there, but Namaste is there. But Namaste nevertheless is a gesture. So some beginning has been made. So there is a strong domestic market. So that itself means a lot to us. Of course, we are now on the verge of reforming the labor laws. A beginning has been made in some of the states. We will do that. 90,000 crores is being given to the electric distribution companies so that they revive. So our power sector becoming stronger. So certainly we have that. Then, is it that everything is failure? There are success stories. Saubhagya scheme of electrifying the villages, it has been a success. Ujjwala, free gas connections. So that has also been a success. Janadhana Yojana, in which you transferred money to the accounts of people. In fact, in 69, when banks were nationalized, let me tell you, one of the ways, 69 was one of the very important years in the history of India's economy. So banks were nationalized with the intention of including the poor people in the financial system of the country, that they should have a bank account, they should have an access to credit. All that was said. But nationalization still did not achieve what it wanted to achieve on these counts. Although agriculture was declared a priority sector, but banks were quite apprehensive of extending loan to them. So that was a problem. But Janadhana Yojana helped in financial inclusion of the people. And another is in IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Remember, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, quickly, without going into details of this, one problem in India was whenever a company was declared insolvent, that is, it cannot, or bankrupt, it cannot run any longer, the process of winding up was very difficult. It took many days, and the creditors like you and me who gave loan to that company had to wait for longer time. There were many laws governing the IBC, insolvency and bankruptcy. So India then said we should have insolvency and bankruptcy code, which simplified the procedure after the insolvency norms, and many laws were amended and unified and all that. In fact, World Bank has lauded India for this gesture. And one of the reasons, World Bank prepares a report, you can note down every year, called Ease of Doing Business Report. Ease of Doing Business Report, prepared by World Bank every year, in which it ranks countries based on how easy or difficult it is to do business. So India has jumped many ranks over the 5 years. It is now 77th till the last one just declared. So one of the things where we got kudos from World Bank and other places is insolvency and bankruptcy code. They said, yes, now India is very serious about this. So now insolvency proceedings will not take a longer time. So we are easing the businesses to do. So they need not worry about what will happen and all that. So that is also is there. So the critics said there have been success story. So why not this time? Why to be pessimistic about this? Certainly it may have. Then finally, to quote our finance minister herself, she talked about one ideology and phrase that she said, there is a phrase which says, give man a fish today, his hunger for today is sorted out. But teach him fishing and it takes care of him for life. So give money in your hands. Okay, so you have given him a fish to satisfy his hunger today. But you are teaching him fishing. That is what. But supporters and critics apart, what I have to say that yes, government maybe would have to handle the migrants issues a little more better, maybe few days before. So the plight of the migrants would not have been so much as it is today. But however, the reform measures will certainly go a long way. And we need not always gloat over it. We need not be pessimistic about it. Okay, so we are talking so much about agriculture, okay, and removing it from the fetters. We are talking about MSMEs. Yes, some of the measures also will fructify, and yes, but remember this pandemic itself is like that. This crisis itself is like that. So we have to grapple with it now, what to do. The situation is like that. So this is what it is. Thanks a lot. I hope you have followed. Of course, it is very difficult to squeeze in so many things in a span of 1 hour or so. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. For that wonderful session. I think students would have got a brief idea about what exactly is the stimulus package all about. Just to summarize the session for the participants, you talked about explaining what is protectionism, free trade, capitalism, socialism. Okay. Again, the book that you have mentioned, India Unbound by Gurcharan Das. So I hope that the students will read that particular book. You talked about that market economy and then Atmanirbhar, how disruption of supply chain happened and how the world was dependent on China for most of their components and parts. The importance of MSME sector and the strong we make the MSME sector, the better will be for the Indian economy. And you also talked about the critics' view about that. Over one hand, you are talking about globalization, and the other hand, you are talking about protectionism. So there is a complicated situation here. The other thing is the labor laws, the land reforms, how agriculture and privatization can also come in. Okay, and finally the loans that you have given to all the institutions, but not given actual money in hand to the different institutions. So, sir, that was a wonderful session. I hope the students would have a brief, not as you have rightly said that to an extent, they would have understood the impact of the stimulus package. So, I'll just take the Q&A. There are certain questions regarding the session. So the first question is, as RBI Governor Mr. Shashikant Das stated that GDP is projected to be negative for the financial year 2021. Is it so, then what would be the impact on job market?
You're right. First of all, RBI Governor, I think, you said Shashikant. Someone has written Shashikant, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is Shaktikanta Das.
Shaktikant.
Right. So it is his prediction that GDP growth is going to be negative. Of course, there are various predictions. They say it will be less than 2%. Someone has said negative. Of course, if that is lesser and lesser the GDP, what is going to happen? There will be lesser demand for goods. See, remember, GDP is what? Gross domestic product. Again, you will learn about this. Okay, so it is the final value of all goods and services produced in an economy during a period of time. So there are various components of it. So I will not go into that. But remember, when GDP is lesser and lesser, that means economic growth is very lower. That means people are not able to buy goods and businesses are not able to invest. Your exports dwindle. So, and if it is going to be negative, all the more a problem. But there is still time for that to say whether it is going to be negative. But certainly for some period of time, even before the pandemic hit, there was a problem. So GDP was falling. But we hope that it will take some time, wait for some month, maybe an year. So GDP falls, that means less and less of consumption of goods, less and less of investment in the capital goods, in plant machinery, in businesses. So that is what.
Okay. So Abhishek asked two questions here. So first I'll read like, what kind of businesses fall under MSME? Can you give some examples? And the second part is, should India boycott Chinese product to grow up Indian economy?
Okay, as far as should India boycott these products, now that is debatable, Abhishek. Yes, if you want, recently one of my friends called me and said he has taken a vow. He said that I will not buy Chinese goods from now onwards. Okay, but now remember, all the countries have ganged up really. Not ganged up is not a good word. Gathered, against China. So they are thinking, led by US, how to punish China and all, whether that happened. But it depends whether we should boycott. Okay, as a patriotic patriot, we said, okay, fine. Boycott then. Why not? Okay, it is better. If China was really responsible for all this, then yes, it is punished. Finally, if it is proved. Okay. Regarding what kind of business MSMEs, it can be anything, the textiles can be in electronic components usually. So in MSMEs, there is not that only these areas and that areas can be MSME. Okay. One of my friends has an MSME, wherein he makes stapler pins. Okay. So it can be anything.
Okay. There is a question from Roshni. She is asking, the package is more being supply centric, but for the economy to restart, we need to address both supply as well as demand.
Demand
centric. So what about demand generation package by the government? And why didn't government think of debt monetization, that is printing money?
Okay. Right, Roshni, I think you are economics graduate or maybe commerce graduate. That's why you're asking this. See, let me tell you, supply side and demand side. Now, can you sometimes draw a fine line between them? I know what is your argument. That's what critics are also telling. Loans by banks and all. So supply side, what is that you are going to demand side? Okay. So now, if I have an MSME, okay, right? And now I need money for my raw materials. I purchase raw materials from a raw material supplier, my friend. I pay him. Now he gets paid for that. He has money in his hands. With that money in his hand, maybe he purchased a pair of clothes for himself, maybe a cell phone for his wife, maybe a camera for his son. Who knows? Now that seller who sold him mobile, he has money with him. He may go and buy. That person who sold camera to him, he has money with him. He will go and buy. So demand spurring has happened here. So that is there. But that question will remain. That is going to be debated. Why not money directly in the hands of people? The supporters or critics are going to debate a lot. Why monetization? This is what, for this to understand, maybe others may not be able to understand. There is fiscal policy, there is monetary policy. Monetary policy is taken care of by the central bank of a country. In our case, Reserve Bank of India, whereas fiscal policy is taken care of by the government. So public expenditure revenue is all about fiscal policy. Now monetization, it has to print notes, more and more notes. sometimes monetization can trigger what we call it as deficit financing. It may trigger inflation. So will you like it? So that is also one of the reasons, and government has to think about its deficits also, which you call it as fiscal deficit. Now, so much of big packages are done, so there will be some fiscal deficit. So further, maybe it can't. So debate on monetary policy, fiscal policy is also big debate. In fact, we can have one class only on monetary policies and issues related to it, one class on fiscal policy and issues related to it, which you will have in your second semester. Right.
Okay, so similar to what you have mentioned about this monetization, Sai Teja is asking about this printing of more currency will lead to high inflation.
Yeah.
So can you explain more about that?
That's what, see, there's more money in circulation. Okay, deficit financing. So more money, too much money chasing too few goods. So inflation. So that is what.
Okay. So there are a couple of questions regarding FDI. So one is whether FDI will the FDI investment boost Indian economy, and the second is if yes, if FDI is increased in defense. So since defense is the most protected sector, should we reduce the participation of outsiders in defense?
So again, that's what we have bought the Fine Balancing Act. We have also put some quotes in the negative list. That is again our Atmanirbhar. Our Atmanirbhar coupled with our globalization. So that's a fine balance. So in the recent budget, in the recent measures that was announced, certain defense weapons are in the negative list. So only you and I can make it here. Indigenization. No foreigner will give it. So that is again to help self-reliance. And again, maybe there were some issues related to that. So, of course, so that is there. Right.
Okay. So there is one controversial question that one of the student is asking, Indranil Banerjee. He's saying that all the government schemes are mostly on false data provided by the local authorities. Okay. So is it not the government duty to check whether all the schemes are actually benefiting the ones who actually got those benefits?
Yes,
so he is saying that he has worked with rural people and saying it from his own experience.
Yes.
Indranil Banerjee. Yeah.
Internally, you are right. We have measures, but many a time there is crisis of implementation. Okay, so there is always a need to do research on that, continuously take, feedback from the beneficiaries. Okay, that will always be there. So that is what I can say in that, crisis of implementation has always been there somewhere or other.
I think this is similar to what you have already addressed. Madhurya, she's asking, sir, how can the problem of MSME can be solved considering the present pandemic situation?
Now, these are the measures that will help them. That's the only thing. They have to wait and see now. Direct transfers, as they say, may not happen right now, but still the government said it is open to that idea. Now, additional rates by the bank to MSMEs are going to be announced. Okay. Because the rates were not yet announced on that day when this was announced. So the credit offtake will be there and MSMEs will benefit.
Okay. So
government has said, let me tell you, government has said that it has not closed its book. Okay. To answer some of the problems of Indian corporate sector, which is also telling that, and there is more to be done on tourism and aviation. Aviation sector needs a boost, of course, but I am always a big critic of aviation sector because you book your air ticket during the good times also. You book your air tickets and you want to cancel, entire money will go. Okay, I wasn't aviation sector being good at that time. That's what I want to of various airlines. That when good times were there, when a passenger, even during the peak time, summer and all, when he wanted to cancel for some reason, why didn't you give him his money back? Okay, you did not do that anytime. And very high rates and all that. So, of course, it is very bad to talk about them, but this is aviation sector has never been that much of a good boy. Let me tell you. So that is also there. Okay, right.
Okay. So this is the next question is related to the migration issue of laborers. So Shishir Sahai asked, like, lot of laborers are migrating to their respective hometowns, and we are not foreseeing a situation where it is getting better. So will it have an adverse effect on our industries and economy in the country?
Yeah, that is what now see migration happened. So now they have gone to their homes. Now the industries have opened here.
Yes.
They may face a labor shortage. That is, but soon migrants will return now. What I feel, yes, till then there is going to be hiccups. There are going to be problems.
But the problem will be temporary in nature. As you said.
Temporary in nature.
Okay, okay. There is one question by from Ram Babu. He's asking, is consumer behavior is going to change drastically after this COVID-19 situation?
How is it going to change?
Consumer behavior, the behavior of the consumer. Is it going to change drastically?
I mean, how it is going to change is what he has to tell us.
Maybe that what I can deduce from it is like a lot of measures that the government is taking about social distancing, okay, and the opening up of malls and theaters in the recent times. So does the consumer behavior will change?
Yes, yes, maybe yes for some time again.
So I'll just add to it, Ram Babu. See, one of the things is definitely some of the behavior is going to change. Say, suppose you were very used to going to an ATM and withdraw money and going to a bank and deposit money. So that could probably move into digital transactions now. So from rather than risking yourself going to a bank outlet or an ATM outlet, you might use a digital app and transfer money. So this is a change in the behavior.
Yeah,
so
yeah, that could happen.
That
your
could happen.
Yes, that could happen.
One thing.
Maybe they can shoot questions on my mail ID also, rajesh@ipindia.org.
Yeah,
you can give my mail ID.
I'll just take last two questions.
Yeah.
Yes. I'll just ask you to in the last part. So I'll just take two questions, sir. This is again related to startups. Okay. Post-pandemic, does it provide more opportunity for startups? Pandemic, does the startups and MSME have more opportunities?
Yes. What is clear, Prashant? Can you come again? What is it?
The post this pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic,
startups have a bigger opportunity.
Do we see?
Yes.
Okay.
Do they have in education sector? Okay, maybe more of
in general he is asking.
Yeah, it will be. More startups will spring up, more so in education sector. That is going to happen. Let me tell you one thing. People are talking about new normal. Everything will change. At the best, I feel this is going to be there once vaccine comes. Okay, once vaccine comes, fall in place. After an year or so, by this time, of course, some views are so much that for 2 years also vaccine may not come. But assuming that after 1 year, the vaccine comes in next few months, then it is tested, and after 1 year, that will back to normal. You mark my words, again our theaters are going to be full. You are again going to go for your Chinese dinner and your Manchuria block hotels with people, your favorite chaat, your favorite street vendor. Okay, so all that is going to be there after a year. Really, we pray for that, and it's going to happen. And migrants, of course, their plight definitely, it's thing to be worried about, and soon that also will be solved. Right.
Okay. One thing that I'll mention, like the questions pertaining to the stimulus package and all these things, you can mail your questions to Sir.
Rajesh.
So can you just you can spell out your...
Yeah, Rajesh@ipeindia.org.
Okay, so it's Rajesh@ipeindia.org. So any
Yeah.
questions related to stimulus package, the investment, the boosting of Indian economy and all, so you can share your response. So it's display on your screen as well. You can see it, rajesh@ipindia.org, and post that. From 31st again, we'll meet 11 a.m. Okay. Thank you, Mishra sir, for taking his time out. Thank you, Rakesh sir, okay, for helping us with all the webinar activities. So see you tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, Mishra sir. Thanks to you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.